Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is going to be a short one. My apologies. I'm working on a few other things at the moment, but I did want to bounce in here and hit on some random notes and a few other things that I had lined up, and then I will depart for this particular episode. First of all, let me revisit a quick subject just briefly in the last episode. When I was breaking down what occurred in the last school board meeting in the town where I live and all of the happenings regarding all of that, I can assure you that this situation is far worse for the school district than they can possibly imagine. And I'm just going to leave it at that right now. They're in deep, deep trouble. Again, I'm working behind the scenes on a number of different things. I'm not at liberty to discuss any of it right this second. A time might even come sometime in the future, don't know when I get to write about all of this on my Substack page. And of course, exactly what transpired and has transpired here and what's going to happen in the future. But I'm just going to leave that to the side. Just understand, again, I'm not mentioning this on the show for very good reason, but they're in deep, deep trouble. And again, that's putting it mildly. The number of people that are going to find out about this is going to be endless, and this is going to back up on all of them. Fortunately, Dawn King has absolved herself of any wrongdoing and any liability in the future. In particular, again, just to review with her no vote to not release a particular document. As a result of that, the rest of them stepped in it big time. So, with that said, I'm just going to move on here, but trust me, when the time is right, I will provide you some updates if you're curious. Again, I think that there is a much larger picture here that has to be, of course, used in the future for educational purposes to give the citizens of any area an upper hand when it comes to a school board holding them accountable and a number of other things. Again, this is something I'll probably dedicate an entire episode to sometime in the future, certainly on my Substack page, but that time just isn't right this second. So bear with me again, because it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be information you're going to want to share with just about anybody you know, regardless of where you live. Again, this is a nationwide problem. School boards being corrupt, covering their own asses, blaming other people, etc., etc. All of this, again, this is what they do. It is their playbook, and unfortunately, the gullible populace just drinks it in and just blindly believes that school boards and school districts just do the right thing just because. That's not true. It typically doesn't work that way. Same thing again with anybody who holds an administrative position in a building or at the district level, that they must just, be in it for the kids, as they like to say. Well, they might be in it for the kids in all the wrong ways. As, of course, it's been pointed out here on the show with regularity, but at the exact same time, I'm telling you, some of them just like power. And it's a false perception of power because they're not powerful. And as I've said before, and as you're well aware, the amount of laws that these people have to follow are endless, and they don't even know what they are. The amount of policy that they have to follow is endless, and they don't even know what it is. So catching these people is arguably the easiest thing you can do, because again, they typically catch themselves in their own traps. And that's happened in this case, and I love it. So, with that said, let me move on to some other things here, a few geopolitical things. First of all, here's an anonymous post that was on Great Awakening from a couple of days ago, and it said, "Interesting happenings forecast regarding Ukraine conflict." Again, if anybody's still paying attention to this back and forth nonsense, and anybody is, again, siding with the Ukrainian government, well, I have more video on my X account, of course, that is bouncing around lots of different places, simply showing, again, the Azov battalion picking up random citizens off the street, arresting them and throwing them into vans. Yes, they're still doing that. They're still kidnapping people and throwing them into the front lines to get slaughtered. But here's what this particular post said. It said, quote, "Found it in a comment section from someone I don't know." Again, very vague. It's just theorizing here, but We'll give it a read. It says it was originally posted in Russian, goes by the moniker Tyrone. So that's good. So what's next in the US, Ukraine, UK, France triangle? It says there's 11 points here. Number 1, Trump offered Ukraine to sign the agreement on Ukrainian assets. Zelensky will not sign. 2, the process will go to court, in an American court. So they think. 3, all subsequent U.S. aid will be provided only on a commercial basis. And as soon as Ukraine signs such an agreement, this will automatically become proof of commercial and the aid that has already been provided. Number 4, Britain and France will also begin to formalize aid as a loan. 5, the U.S. will also transfer intelligence data for Ukraine to a category of commercial aid. 6, in parallel, the U.S. will begin to lift sanctions against Russia, which will raise a similar question in Europe. 7, Japan and South Korea will join the United States sanctions policy. 8, the political confrontation between Europe and the United States will move into the format of a brutal economic war. 9, small European countries will begin to either side with the U.S. or take neutrality. 10, the U.S. will begin criminal prosecution of Ukrainian individuals involved in the theft of money and material assets paid for from the U.S. budget. 11, and finally, in a few months, Zelensky will be recognized as a hostile person for the United States. And it wrapped up and said, we don't even have to do anything. And all of that, again, was translated from Russian. So again, good news, I think, coming in the future. Time will tell. Again, a little theorizing from a Russian, don't know who, allegedly. But hey, theorizing's fun from time to time. Speaking of that, there's also this. JFK files, yes, those are still available. This is an unclassified document from 1981, it says, and then again reissued in 1989. It says the following, quote, the Central Conference, I should tell you this, I guess, it's from the Anti-Defamation League. That's right, the ADL. So get a load of this one. The Central Conference of American Rabbis at the 47th Annual Conference held in New York on June 26, 1937, declared for the exemption of Jews from military service in accordance with the highest interpretation of Judaism. It says, our Talmud tells us, quote, when you go to war, do not go as the first, but as the last, so that you may return as the first, unquote. It says, why should we, the only truly international people, be concerned with the mutable interests of stirred Goyim nations? It says, we must do everything in our power to help the great president who has helped us so greatly in establishing control. Support the draft law when it is presented to the American people. Support England and France, for they are fighting Judah's greatest enemy, the Goyim German state. It says you are urged to support United States participation in the holy war of Judah without reservation and without fear. It says we can repeat our triumphs of 19-something, it's a year, I guess, but it's blocked out, if we maintain our united front, and the dumb Goyim will fight while we profit, with the aid of our friend in Washington. It says powerful Jews will be on all draft boards, and Jewish physicians will protect you from military service. Arrangements are already made to exempt you, in case religious exemption cannot be prepared in time. You are warned to renounce and abjure, repudiate, and deny any of this information if questioned by Gentiles, even under oath, as outlined in the Talmud, and justified for the preservation of our race. The Central Committee signed the Anti-Defamation League. That's nice. That's a nice little document. Again, they favor one another. And I suppose they get to, but they're doing it, of course, at our expense and everybody else's expense. The problem, of course, is lots of people don't know this. The people who fund wars are the very individuals, again, that seek to use us to, of course, get destroyed in those wars that they manufacture. Remember last week, again, when I was talking about Mike Benz, and I was talking about how Mike Benz makes the rounds on particular people's shows regarding certain issues in XYZ. Again, he was on Joe Rogan's show, like I said last week, or whenever it was, the last time he was on. And he brought up 9/11, kind of out of nowhere. He brought up John Brennan. And he said John Brennan is the one who openly allowed for the 9/11 hijackers to come into the country. What hijackers? What is he talking about? There were no hijackers, because there were no planes on 9/11. Watch the last war video, and I played a video again that proves that there were no planes on 9/11. It's an excellent video. Again, it's people on the ground, people recording, people watching, saying there was no plane. And people are saying, well, the radio and the TV saying there was a plane, and they're like, there was no plane. There were just explosions, which means there weren't hijackers, because there weren't planes that were being hijacked. But not if you listen to Mike Benz. Again, he slides these things in there because, again, people will blindly trust him, which means you have to just trust everything that he's saying. You don't have to trust even everything that I'm saying. I don't want you to. I want you to look up this information on your own. But these kinds of people, again, are controlled opposition. And again, you get to see exactly what they know and what they don't know, and it's really alarming. But yeah, not an accident. There was also this one, kind of random, but Ian Carroll was out there along with Candace Owens, and they decided to bring up this very gossipy rumor that's taking place having to do with RFK Jr., and that RFK Jr. is wrapped up in some sexting scandal with some woman, again, who was allegedly a part of his campaign for a little while when he was running for president or something along those lines. And then, of course, they asked the Jewish question and how, this is why he supports Israel and 1,000 other things, of course, because he's blackmailed. I'll be honest with you, again, I haven't looked into it, so I don't know. I always found his support of Israel to be a bit suspicious. His support of Rabbi Shmuley to be rather suspicious as well. But that's surface level obvious stuff. But yeah, again, I don't have any proof of it one way or another. Nothing has come out thus far, certainly not in the mainstream. If we know about this and a video like that makes the rounds and people have seen it, then you have to be certain that the President of the United States has seen it, that other people in his administration have seen it. And again, it's possible that questions are being asked. It's possible that cards are being pulled. It's possible that blackmailers are being knocked off. Who's to really know? But again, I'm not going to run with something when I clearly don't have enough proof. And frankly, that kind of gossipy stuff just really isn't. It's not up my lane. If any of it's true, it's horrible. I mean, that goes without saying, regardless of who the person is. But again, if it's unsubstantiated and people are just throwing this out there because he's accomplishing a great deal at HHS, then it's a distraction. So I'm not sure one way or another, but I'm just going to leave this one alone until something else comes out. But yeah, just wanted to make mention of that. Again, you can watch an Ian Carroll video on his X account about it. It's about 9 minutes long. I put it at the beginning of the video section of the last war video on Saturday night. You can check that out there too if you're interested. But again, I don't have proof one way or another. That's not my cup of tea. It's not one of those things that I investigate. And again, it's not because I support RFK or Donald Trump that I'm not looking into it. I frankly, things like adultery, I just don't care. Again, it's awful. That goes without saying. And of course, if any of it comes out and it's true, I don't know if that keeps him from doing his job. Let it play out and let him keep working and doing the great things that he's doing. But again, I'm not closing my eyes to the possibility. I'm not closing my eyes to the issue. I just don't know one way or another. And frankly, I don't think anybody really does. I don't think anybody, again, can hone in on anything specific other than maybe just a couple of girls talking back and forth about something, gossiping about something. Who's to know? Again, not a huge fan of Candace Owens, never really have been. She kind of goes from some low-hanging fruit. She's basically the black Megyn Kelly, for lack of a better phrase. Very gossipy, and does a couple of investigations from time to time, but yeah, not that interested in it. Okay, a couple other random things here. First of all, there's this. The number of states, and this is one of those pet peeves that I have, where you mention chemtrails to people and they lose their minds because they've never looked up in the sky and actually questioned anything. As it turns out, again, the number of states that have legislation on the books and proposed legislation and are drafting more legislation to eliminate chemtrails from the skies and the poisoning of the human race and, of course, crops and the soil and everything else. There are a number of states in the United States. In fact, it's probably over half, or approximately half. So again, this is a nice list that you can basically just read off to anybody if you're interested. Here are the states again on the books thus far that either have proposed legislation or have introduced legislation or even again implemented and written into law the banning of chemtrails from the skies. Again, these are unmanned airplanes filled with poison, barium, strontium, aluminum, and God knows what else, lithium, among others, that of course rain down on us on a day in, day out basis. I mean, here in Southwest Ohio, we got hosed the other day. Just hosed. It would have been a very nice blue sky day. Not so. So here are the states, and unfortunately, Ohio is not one of them. Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Idaho, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wyoming. So again, somebody says, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Is it? Is it really? And speaking of airplanes, this is from virtue.news/Republicans. Here we go. It says, Republicans unveil bold plan to abolish TSA. And then it says, shift airport security to the private sector. Senators Lee and Tuberville lead charge to replace federal agency with privatized solutions in a striking move to reshape America's aviation security landscape. Republican Senators Mike Lee of Utah and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama introduced the Abolish the TSA Act on Thursday, aiming to dismantle the Transportation Security Administration. Excellent. This, of course, was one of those things that was brought about as a result of the 9/11 attacks, quote unquote, and was implemented in November of 2001. Not to mention the amount of money that I'm sure is spent as a result of the TSA is endless, and yet they haven't found any weapons or explosives whatsoever since its introduction. It says under the proposed legislation, the TSA would be dissolved into within 3 years, of enactment, providing a transition period of airports to contract private security companies. It says the bill mandates the creation of the Office of Aviation Security Oversight within the Federal Aviation Administration to regulate these firms, ensuring that they meet federal standards without conducting warrantless searches, a key sticking point for the senators who cite invasive TSA pat-downs and screenings as violations of constitutional rights. The plan also requires the Secretaries of Homeland Security and Transportation to submit a reorganization proposal to Congress within 90 days of the bill's passage, detailing the transfer of non-aviation TSA duties, such as rail and pipeline security, to the Department of Transportation. Excellent. Of course, there's critics of all of this, and then there's supporters of all of this, and back and forth. It says as passenger volumes rise, averaging 2.5 million daily screenings, the stakes are high. Whether the Abolish the TSA Act gains traction or stalls, it signals a bold GOP vision to redefine how America secures its skies. And of course, there's also a rumor that FEMA is going to be abolished by the Department of Homeland Security, which would be a fantastic thing. Again, certainly all the hurricane business of the last year should have proved that to everybody, that it was completely useless, completely discriminating against endless people for a variety of political reasons, certainly at the direction of the federal government at the time. And yeah, they should be abolished, no doubt about it. Now some jab-related stuff here. Again, just kind of in conclusion, I've got a couple of things. First of all, HHS is set to cut $12 billion to state health departments. $12 billion. This is excellent. Again, a lot of that money that was making its way to the state and county health departments, of course, was filtering down to the county level and, the very local level. All this nonsense grant money, which of course is your tax dollars and our tax dollars. It was all USAID nonsense along with money laundering and everything else. But even so, the simple fact that that's now been cut is an excellent, excellent thing. That should mean, hopefully, that you'll no longer see any COVID ads particular places. Now, unfortunately, they're still pushing other shots, but who's to say? Maybe part of this money cutting is eliminating that also. This might just end up being one of those things that we see sort of out in the wild. We just see it out in the environment, less billboards, less signage, whatever it may be. Again, I'm not saying it's all going away, but $12 billion being cut from their budget is a fantastic thing. Again, they were really enemy number one at the local level. The health departments were the ones telling schools what to do. Schools were gullible enough to contact the health departments and say, what should we do? We can't think for ourselves. Same thing with universities. And then before you knew it, they were all doing exactly what the health departments were telling them to do. And wouldn't you know it, every single health department was telling everybody the exact same message, regardless of where the health department existed. When everybody's thinking alike, you know the rest of it. Absolutely outrageous. But there was this. This is kind of a neat little deletion of some executive orders here. This was from Unfeudalist at Unfeudalist on X. And they said, holy smokes, how did I miss this? Last Friday, March 14th anyway, of 2025, Trump signed Executive Order 14236 and revoked Executive Order 14081, the mRNA Bioeconomy Executive Order. This is huge news. Now let me go back in time. In September of 2022, this executive order was signed, allegedly by Joe Biden, if not, of course, his auto signature. It was titled the following, quote, Advancing Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Innovation for a Sustainable, Safe, and Secure American Bioeconomy. If all of that sounds frightening, yes, it certainly should. Here's what it said, and there's a rather key part of this which is highlighted, and I'll get to that here in just a minute. But it says, by the authority vested in me as President of the Constitution of the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, and all of this again is just Section 1. It says policy. It is the policy of my administration to coordinate a whole-of-government approach to advance biotechnology and biomanufacturing towards innovation solutions in health, climate change, energy, food, security, agriculture, supply chain resilience, and national and economic security. Central to this policy and its outcomes are principles of equity, ethics, safety, and security that enable access to technologies, processes, and products in a manner that benefits all Americans and the global community, and that maintains United States technological leadership and economic competitiveness. It goes on with all of that nonsense, and it says, biotechnology harnesses the power of biology to create new services and products which provide opportunities to grow the United States economy and workforce and improve the quality of our lives and the environment. So saith Joe Biden. It says the economic activity derived from the biotechnology and biomanufacturing is referred to as the bioeconomy, quote unquote. Also, of course, basically translation, profiting from the wireless body area network. Not good. The COVID-19 pandemic, it says, has demonstrated the vital role of biotechnology and biomanufacturing in developing and producing life-saving diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines that protect Americans and the world. Joke's on you, none of that's true. Although the power of these technologies is most vivid at the moment in the context of human health, biotechnology and biomanufacturing can also be used to achieve our climate and energy goals. That means kill us. Because remember, net zero means killing all of us. We are the carbon they seek to destroy. It goes on, it says, and of course, improve food security and sustainability, secure our supply chains, and grow the economy across all of America. Here's the highlighted part, as if all of that wasn't bad enough. It says, for biotechnology and biomanufacturing to help us achieve our societal goals, the United States needs to invest in foundational scientific capabilities. We need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. Unlock the power of biological data, including through computing tools and artificial intelligence. And advance the science of scale-up production while reducing the obstacles for commercialization so that innovative technologies and products can reach markets faster, unquote. Horrific. That should go without saying. But that entire executive order is now destroyed, which brings in this one as well. Another executive order here that was written on March 14th of 2025 by Donald Trump, which of course reverses a lot of this COVID nonsense, including the executive order I just read. It was titled the following, Executive Order 14236, Additional Rescissions of Harmful Executive Orders and Actions. Section 1, Purpose. In Executive Order 14148 of January 20th, 2025, initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions, I rescind 78 presidential orders and memoranda issued by then-President Biden. I also directed the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, and the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs to compile lists of additional orders, memoranda, and proclamations issued by the prior administration that should be rescinded. I have determined that the following additional rescissions are necessary to advance the policy of the United States to restore common sense to the federal government. Section 2, the revocation and orders and actions. The following executive actions are hereby revoked. There's a bunch. I'm going to read A through K here. Executive Order 13994 of January 21st, 2021, ensuring a data-driven response to COVID-19 and future high-consequence public health threats. That certainly seems like one to get rid of because, again, the whole thing was a lie. B, which was signed on February 4th of 2021, revitalizing America's foreign policy and national security workforce institutions and partnerships. C, advancing the human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons around the world. Yes, this is why USAID is no more. For things just like that. Executive Order 14026, increasing the minimum wage for federal contractors. Section E, finding a severe energy supply interruption. Seems rather odd and rather specific. It goes on here, let me see. Section F, delegating authority under the Defense Production Act to ensure an adequate supply of infant formula. Okay. Another one that was titled Presidential Determination Pursuant to Section 303 of the Defense Production Act of 1950 as amended on solar photovoltaic modules and module components. Yikes. None of this sounds good, which is, again, why it's been disbanded and completely reversed and abolished. Excellent. Presidential determination pursuant to Section 303 of the Defense Production Act of 1950 as amended on insulation. The next one, again, 303 of the Defense Production Act of 1950, which is what a bunch of these appear to be, certainly the next one as well, on electrolyzers, fuel cells, and platinum group metals. Another one here having to do with electric heat pumps. The next one, advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing innovation for a sustainable, safe, and secure American bioeconomy. That, of course, was the one I just read, which is horrible, as all of these are. The next one, National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year of 2022. Arms transfer policy is another one. Department of Defense supply chains resilience. Advancing worker empowerment rights and high labor standards globally. Probably means not hiring white people. What's the next one? Nations to better embrace our trust, responsibility, and promote the next era of tribal self-determination. Good Lord. Two more. Apprenticeships in industries and the federal government and promoting labor management forums. And then finally, investing in America and investing in American workers. Why would you need an executive order for that when, that's just common sense? That was signed, by the way, September of 2024. On his way out the door, Joe Biden auto-penned that one, apparently. So there you have it. Again, good stuff happening, no doubt about it. And reversing old fake orders from the old fake president is certainly a good move in the right direction. Not to mention all of the fraud, waste, abuse, and money laundering that is associated with all of it. And speaking of money and COVID, I will end with this one. This was a post on greatawakening.win, a very nice write-up, specifically, again, having to do with not just COVID and the money laundering, but also how this has actually weakened the Federal Reserve, certainly in the eyes of the people and politically. It said the following here, quote, Introduction. In 2020, the world was hit by what was described as a global pandemic, quote unquote, but behind the headlines, lockdowns, and panic, something far more consequential was unfolding, an engineered crisis that served as a cover for a massive power shift in global finance. At the center of that shift was President Donald J. Trump, who used the chaos not just to respond to COVID-19, but to cripple the true seat of economic control in America, the Federal Reserve. The perfect cover, it says, a manufactured crisis. COVID-19 created the perfect storm. Fear paralyzed the public. Governments worldwide enacted sweeping emergency powers. Big Pharma crashed in with rushed vaccines. Meanwhile, trillions of dollars were created out of thin air. The average citizen saw stimulus checks and mandates, but few noticed the deeper move, the merging of the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury under Trump's watch. The setup, CARES Act and Treasury-Fed fusion. Under the CARES Act, the Treasury handed over $454 billion to the Fed to support emergency lending. The Fed, in turn, leveraged this to backstop trillions in loans to corporations, states, and banks. On paper, this was economic stimulus. In reality, it marked the beginning of the Fed losing its independence. For the first time, monetary policy and fiscal policy were effectively merged, with the Treasury calling the shots. The kill shot, Trump's quiet coup. While the media focused on daily case counts, and vaccine rollouts, Trump orchestrated a deeper war, one against the private central banking system itself. By tying the Fed's emergency powers to Treasury capital, Trump put the Fed in a chokehold. They could create money, but only with Treasury approval. That flipped over a century of monetary control. And while many blame Trump for his vaccine support, it's possible he allowed Operation Warp Speed to go forward, not to help Big Pharma, but to keep the public distracted while he executed the financial reset. Aftermath. The hollowed-out Fed. Fast forward to 2025, and the Fed still exists, but it's a shadow of its former self. Its credibility is damaged, its independence compromised, and its tools less effective. Meanwhile, populist movements, state-level resistance to the IRS, and discussions of eliminating federal income taxes are gaining traction. And then they wrote, conclusion, COVID-19 was never just a health crisis. It was a battlefield. And while many players made power grabs for control, Trump may have been the only one who used the chaos to dismantle the real engine of global control, the Federal Reserve. He didn't just survive the deep state attack, he flipped the board, unquote. Regarding all of that, I have no doubt that that's the case. One of the ways, again, that we can find this out is if you bounce over to the Doge website, doge.gov, you can easily see again when you click on the spend button in the upper right-hand corner on the top bar. You scroll all the way down. These sources for this money are coming directly from the Department of the Treasury. And again, Donald Trump is apparently chairman of the board of the Treasury, so to speak. So again, the Treasury is following all of this money. It's not the Federal Reserve. They're two completely separate entities, or again, they have been merged into one, and you're really not even hardly hearing of the Fed anymore. Yes, Jerome Powell is allegedly still holding a particular position, and he's not lowering interest rates and this, that, and the other, and that's just what we're hearing in the news. But what's actually happening, of course, is the entire thing is being defunded. These departments are being completely stripped of the amount of money that they were dishing out, or certainly receiving as a result of taxpayer funds. Take the Department of Education, for example. It has listed here that in the fiscal year of 2019, they were receiving $104.4 billion. And in fiscal year of 2024, they took in $268.4 billion. And it has it listed again, the Department of Education is number 2. I would say number 2 in growth, certainly from fiscal year of 2019 to fiscal year of 2024. That's a boatload of money and a boatload of wasteful spending. And it's just been eliminated, which is fantastic. Again, it's been said a million times that COVID was a Trojan horse. It most certainly was. It was ushered in again to bring about all of this fraud, all of this ideology. And the more ideology and the more programs and policies and people that you bring in to engage in all this made-up nonsense, regardless of the department, all of that, again, was a way to siphon money away from people. Increase the cost of everything, take more money away from the average American, and before you know it, government is way larger than the people have no say. It was, again, purposefully designed to cripple America. But at the exact same time, good guys behind the scenes knew that the bad guys wanted that to be the plan. And there's no doubt that there was a counter-operation taking place. In fact, speaking of education very quickly, it's come to my attention here locally, and this isn't necessarily new, of course, as you've heard me bring things like this up before. Like where in the state of Ohio, for example, school boards, because of course they're losing money, they're losing participation, people aren't attending, and they don't know what to do. And of course, because of the voucher system that exists in the state of Ohio, along with other states as well when it comes to quote-unquote school choice. Not only are they throwing money as school districts into law firms in an attempt to reverse or go after currently existing state law, regarding freedom, I might add, but what they're also doing is they're throwing money as school districts and wasting money into larger consortiums in an opportunity to essentially figure out why it is that they're losing students and why it is that they need to try to find ways to make more money as a school district. They're spending money trying to find the problem that they themselves created in the first place. This is how stupid these school districts are. This is how dumb the entire business is. And then, of course, while they're wasting all of that money on all of that and those useless endeavors, they're screaming at the top of their lungs that they have no money. And of course, now health departments are going to do the same because state health departments have been gutted also, which is excellent. Which means that county health departments and local health departments aren't going to have the money that they once had either, which means they got to make cuts also. They got to get rid of all the gay stuff. They have to get rid of, again, all of the awareness movements and all the posters and the PSAs and everything else that they were doing that, again, was just wasting money and hurting people. They think it was helping people. Joke's on everybody, it wasn't helping anybody. So again, there's no doubt that there is chess being played here. There's no doubt it's multidimensional, and this goes so deep. Again, I've probably only touched the surface with the existence of this entire show with all of the documentation that I've brought to bear here, but it's a mess, and it's got to continue to get cleaned up. If you haven't seen this, I highly recommend it. It was, I believe, at the very beginning of the weekend here, this past weekend. I think it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken, but Elon Musk and some of the Doge boys, so to speak, were on Bret Baier. And there was a 36-minute interview. I highly recommend you get on YouTube and check that out. It was very interesting. You should look at Bret Baier's face as he's asking these questions and letting these guys talk. His jaw is on the floor. He has a very hard time picking it up because it just keeps dropping at the amount of wasteful spending that's been taking place this entire time. It's mind-blowing. We shouldn't have homelessness in this country. We shouldn't have homeless veterans, homeless anybody. We shouldn't have drug addiction. We shouldn't have people starving. None of that should be existing. It's only government and individuals who work in government and for government that have been stealing from everybody and keeping those things from being solved. But they could get solved overnight. And hopefully in the future, they do get solved. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. Kind of a short one here, but thanks for listening anyway, and I will catch you on Wednesday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.